Associate Boys Director. We have a very special guest. Obviously, we've been doing our Tuesday Zoom meetings. Started off, seems like forever ago, about a month and a half ago with Dustin Watton. And then we had Reed Priddy on here talking about the mindset. We had Josh talking a little bit about visualization, stuff like that. Of course, we had Lauren Carlini, who was phenomenal. And last week, Jordan Larson. And then, of course, I think we can all agree we have the biggest and the baddest of them all. The man, in my opinion, definitely not the myth, I'll tell you that, but for sure the legend. People say arguably, but there's no arguably about it. Definitely the greatest men's volleyball player of all time, both beach and indoor. If you played overseas for a long time, like myself, fortunate enough to, but any gym that you go to who has ever witnessed Karch play, they're just blown away. By far the best player ever in Europe and definitely in Italy. And our current U.S. women's national team head coach as well. Obviously, we all know that the Olympics have been pushed back, but Karch, thanks for joining us today. Really can't thank you enough for coming in and talking to our families and our players, and definitely our coaches are super excited for this. So the stage is yours. Thank you again, and we'll get a little Q&A after you get done chatting, whenever you do, and I know you're on a strict schedule, so we'll keep it to that hour mark for you. So thanks a lot, Karch. Appreciate it.
Awesome, Scott. Very kind introduction for me, and really excited to join you all here. We're in this unique time. Glad I got a lot of thumbs up when I asked how people are staying, which is hopefully well, and hopefully we can get back to something that looks a little more like volleyball. We are in the same situation that you all are in terms of our USA men's team, our indoor team, which until recently was gearing up for a July start to the Olympics. Our USA women's team, so we're not going to our offices, we're not working out, lifting in the gym, which happens to be in Anaheim. Our home gym is American Sports Center there. Some of you may have been there to play or watch tournaments before. It's a great facility, but we have not been able to do any work at all. So we're actually trying to work out plans in terms of how we ramp up. The first thing we're going to do is get back to doing some lifting and then eventually into some volleyball, but some real adjustments to be made. Glad to hear that there have been, that you guys are having meetings like this and getting to hear from people, getting to think about the game a little, getting to think about ways to get better. Hopefully you're jumping on YouTube and looking at good examples, whether it's in men's volleyball or women's volleyball, of all the, because there's so much out there, so much more time for you to watch and look at the role models, maybe in your position in either male or female volleyball. And so while it's an unusual time, a unique time, it's also a time to spend and get to know our families a little better, since we always have such busy lives and we're doing our volleyball and doing our school and doing work and all the other things. So hopefully you're turning this into some positives. A little brief background for me. My father came over from this country to this country when he was 21 years old. He escaped Hungary during a revolution that was crushed by the Communist Party there. And so he came over and made a new life for himself. He had played a lot of volleyball in Hungary and a lot of soccer. So those are the two sports that he taught me growing up. I started playing volleyball when I was 6 years old. And I'm sure a lot of you have beaten that now. I know Lauren Carlini, she beat me with that. I think she was a 5. You mentioned her. She was on an earlier call. So I think she started when she was 5 years old. Played on my first, and I started when I was playing beach, started on the sand. So that's 2-on-2 volleyball. Played my first game of volleyball when I was 9 years old. My dad said he felt I was ready to actually step on a court and try to get it to happen. He got me a much better player to play against him and his friend. We entered our first tournament when I was 11, And when I grew up, it's probably a strange Stone Age universe that compared to what you have now. No social media, no phones, no devices, no email, no internet, no fax, no club volleyball, and no age group tournaments. So when I read Sports Illustrated, when I was 11, I read an article, a rare one in Sports Illustrated, about one of the all-time greats in volleyball, a guy named Larry Rundle, who was a great indoor player for USA and also a great beach player. And I read that he had entered his first tournament as an 11-year-old. Again, no age group tournaments, so just you played adult tournaments in various rankings, novice, A, double A, all the way up to triple A. And so my dad and I said, well, that'd be kind of fun to also have you play as an 11-year-old. So we entered our first tournament together, and we barely lost those 2 games, but it was kind of cool to see a little fear in the eyes of the grown men across the net who the last thing they wanted to do was lose to an 11-year-old kid. So that was kind of an empowering and fun opportunity for me to be able to get to compete against people much older than I was. They made me better. They did not have any mercy for me because they did not want to lose to somebody that young. So they served me every ball. They made me hit every time. And that was the best thing that possibly could have happened for me, is that they did not let up one bit. And that was a big part of my career, was just playing up, playing against adults, getting to see the game the way it would look more closely like when I actually got to be grown up. And that's where you have this huge opportunity to watch YouTube and watch greats like you mentioned Reed Pretty before, and Dustin and others, to watch them. Watch and really study the way they go about their craft, the way they go about being masters of what they're trying to do. That's how so much of how I learned the game was by watching, both when I wasn't playing and watching when I was across the net. It says my internet connection's a little weird, so hopefully you can still hear me all right. But anyway, I went on to play in high school in Santa Barbara, college at UCLA, played on the USA men's team where we won 2 Olympic gold medals. And then I got back into beach volleyball and got to play in the first ever beach volleyball Olympics in 1996 in Atlanta. And for much of that time, I didn't think I was going to be a coach. I was so focused on playing that I really didn't give that any thought in terms of coaching. But eventually, our boys, my wife and I have 2 boys. They're now 29 and 28 years old, but at the time they were just getting into high school. And so what got me my coaching start was that our older boy in 9th grade played on his high school varsity team in a small private high school here in Southern California, in Orange County, California. And they had a pretty tough season. They played 31 matches. They won 0 of them. They went 0-31. Not only did they do that, they lost every set of every match. So they went 0-93. One of those sets, they were even winning 20-10, but weren't able to close it out. And so my wife and I went to cheer them on a lot of those to cheer them. And we're both just thinking, God, what can we do to help them win 1 out of 93? Is there a way we can help them just taste a tiny bit of success? And she said, well, you got to coach them. So I asked. The high school was nice enough to say yes. After our sons and I, the 3 of us met, because I didn't want to just jump in and take over until I had their blessing, until we had a way worked out of trying to figure out, that when we're working together on the volleyball court and in training and in matches, we're not dad and son, we're coach and player. So we figured all that out. And it was really cool because they put a ton of work in. Our other son joined the team. He moved up to 9th grade. Our older son was now a 10th grader. And they put a ton of work in that next season. we played a team that beat us like an absolute drum the year before. And I'll never forget it. It's one of my proudest coaching moments because they won that first game 25-19, and they went nutty like they had just won the world championships. It was incredible. So, but then it was like, okay, guys, calm down for a second. If we could win one of those, maybe we could even win a second one. And they went on to win the match. And that was the first match that they had won in almost 2 years. So really cool moment that that first year, that first experience ignited my passion on a whole different side of volleyball that I didn't know I had until I got to work with them. And our sons joke and say, well, all you got to do is coach at St. Margaret's High School, and that's the path to becoming an Olympic coach. You just coach the boys there for at least one season, and you're ready to go with the national teams. So, but I ended up coaching with the national teams, and I think one of the biggest lessons in that first year for me, which applies to any player who's aspiring to get better, any coach, is to approach it like you've got a lot to learn. When I first got into coaching, when I first figured out that I was going to coach them, obviously I had played a long time. I knew a lot about volleyball, but from a player's perspective, much less so than from a coach's, or I had much less in the way of coaching experience and coaching perspective. So the first thing I did was just say, I'm a total beginner in this. I'm going to sign up for my great friend and mentor and former coach Marv Dunphy's Coaching Clinic 101. And I sat there in the front row of seats and took all the notes I could for those 3 days, had a great time learning from him on a different side of this game. And ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that I've carried with me as a player first, and then as a coach, is a learning mentality, which is one that we still have. All of us with this USA women's program still need that. It's imperative. Why is that? It's because we are not there yet. What do I mean by that? The Olympics has been in the Olympics has had indoor volleyball since 1964, many years ago, before almost all of you were born, in Tokyo. So it's really cool that the next Olympics, which is now next year, not this year, is going back to the birthplace of volleyball. And not only was it the birthplace of volleyball, but it was the first team sport for women in the Olympics, before basketball, before soccer, before field hockey, before all the other ones. And in all that time, the USA women have won 3 silver medals, 2 bronze medals, but no golds as of yet. The men have won 3 gold medals, including Scott and his teammates, their great win in 2008 in Beijing, which is crazy to me now to think that that was 12 years ago, but what an accomplishment they had. And we have been throwing ourselves at that door and trying to knock it down for many, many years. Lots of great coaches, lots of great players have come before with the USA women. And that's still one of our big, hairy goals out there, is to try to be the first USA women's team to stand at the top of the podium. Because we have yet to do it, that's why I would say that we are not there yet. And so we all have to bring this learning mentality. It starts with me. I've got to be hungry to learn and get better and be better next week than I am this week and next month and next year. All of the other coaches and staff members we have, and certainly with our players. And so that's a driving force, and has been since I started this game many years ago as a 6-year-old, just bopping the ball back and forth with my dad, and then started a little over 10 years ago as a coach, is how voraciously can I learn this game? How quickly can I learn? Can I accelerate my learning? Can I make the time that we spend together in our gym count more than the same number of minutes that other teams have in their gym, whether it's USA against one of our great competitors across the net, teams like Brazil, China, Serbia, Italy, or whether it's any club team? How do you all make your time count more and have it be more impactful on your learning? So That would be my introduction. And Scott, take it away. What questions do you have?
Yeah, sorry, Karch. I'm taking notes as we're talking right now. So, yeah, we got quite a few questions here. I think it's great for all you, especially athletes out there in our program. Karch just maybe said the most gold thing I've ever heard my whole entire life is through all of his accomplishments and through everything he's done, he still has a learning mentality. And that's something you have to have every time you step in our gym. First question for you is, how have you seen the sport of volleyball change in the last 20 to 30 years?
The sport has changed radically in a number of ways. First of all, the athletes, the people who play it, keep getting taller and jumping higher and more powerful and hitting the ball harder, whether it's women or men. They just keep doing more and more impressive things on the volleyball court, both indoors and out. Some of the other big changes are that until about 20 years ago, volleyball was scored in a different way. Now, every serve scores a point. That's called rally scoring. That didn't really come into play full time until about 2001 or 2000 or so. But before that, you had to serve. Your team had to be serving to score a point. That was called side out volleyball. And that led to much longer matches. One of the more important and longer matches we ever played was a match against what we now call Russia. It used to be called the Soviet Union, and we got to play them in a big tournament called the World Cup. We were super excited to play them because in our first Olympics, they didn't actually attend. They and a number of other countries boycotted the Olympics. And so we were super excited to have our first chance at them. The match went, I think, 3 hours and 25 minutes. Sometimes the score would go minutes on end without changing as the serve kept going back and forth and teams would side out. Another new thing that has changed in volleyball is the libero or the libero, or as we call it in our USA gym, the bro. That didn't exist either. So middles would stay on the court full time and do a little passing and do a little everything else. They were asked to be a more all-around player than they are now, where middles play across the front row and serve and then step off the court. The amount of substitutions has changed, certainly in junior and high school and college volleyball. We allow a lot more substitutions than anybody else in the rest of the world, somewhere on the neighborhood of 12 to 15 often. Even though once you're done with college and you want to keep playing and you go internationally to play in one of the pro leagues out there, then you will again face what we do internationally at the Olympic level, and that is just 6 substitutions total per set. What else has changed? Let serves are now allowed, but mostly the game is just a lot more powerful than it used to be. And that's an exciting development. It's a really compelling game, whether it's at the club level or the college level or the Olympic level, both for women and for men. It's a game that, and both sand and indoors, it's a game that's, I've had a long time passion for and still having an amazing time being involved with our USA women's team.
Yeah, that brings us to the next question is, have you seen an impact of players playing beach volleyball on their indoor game? And of course, how so? I know you played both, and I have to imagine that this is an easy one for you.
I think it's really important to be a good all-around volleyball player when you're an indoor volleyball player. And as you get older, you probably specialize in one of the 5 positions. Setter, bro, opposite, outside, middle. But all of those players and all of those positions can benefit greatly from just being an all-around player. Everybody who's ready to set if they're needed, if the dig comes their way, and put up what we call a hittable ball. Just put something up in the air, 3 feet off, 3 feet inside the sideline that your hitter can take a nice swing at. So that's a a critical element. So I am a big fan of beach volleyball. It's not so much because it's beach, but I'm a fan because it's 2-on-2 instead of 6-on-6. And when you only have 2 or 3 on the court instead of 6, there's much less specialization. Everybody has to do everything. Even somebody like Phil Dahlhauser on the men's side, as great as he is at the net, he's got to be able to pass and play defense and be a great setter, because the other teams don't even serve him very much. They serve his partner. So one of the things that has made him such a great player is, even though he's so tall and so great at the net, he's also one of the best setters in the game, and he makes his partner a lot better because of that. I do like the soft sand. If we had soft sand courts outside our training facility in Anaheim, I would love to get the members of our team out onto that softer surface for an hour or 2 each week. Of course, we're not doing any training right now. We're not even in the gym. But this would be under more normal conditions. I think it would be great for both our players, our national team players' bodies, to give them a little break from the hardwood, but also younger bodies. I also think it's really good to play smaller group games where you just have to learn to be able to execute all the skills at a competent level. Sometimes we get deprived of that. I was talking to a college coach a couple of weeks ago, and they had their first pre-conference game last year. And they had a freshman who was an opposite, and she served some. They played the game. Afterward, her mom went up to the coach and said, thank you for not subbing her out and letting her play in the backcourt. That is the first time I have seen her serve in competition in 8 years. So that would be an example of where it's tough coming up, depending on the program that you're in, to get opportunities to learn to do things that are important. Nobody knows who's going to have to take that serve at 24 all in a set of volleyball, or at 14 all in the 5th set. So it's important that everybody gets chances to do that. And so a coach can call on you, can call on anybody on the team to be that person to serve a good, tough serve and give your team a chance to score.
Definitely. I think we're blessed right now to have you obviously here on the Zoom and being able to watch The Last Dance with Michael Jordan right now. And if anybody watched episode number 7 and 8, started talking about his mindset, about playing. That's what we're going to go with next. Is obviously at the higher levels of sport, whether as a player or you being a coach right now, you see a lot of self-motivation. And what have you found how, on the coaching side of, motivating your players on the national team right now? And then is there something that you had that kind of self-motivated you along your playing career as well?
I think the answer that I've always approached it with is that it's much like a martial art. Whether I was a player before or a coach now, I'm in this relentless pursuit of mastery, of being better. And when you start a martial art, whether it is karate or jujitsu, whatever, you start with a white belt. You're a total beginner, and it takes you a lot of months. But eventually you learn the things you need to learn. You can show that you know those, and you can execute those things and techniques. And then you earn your first belt that has any color, and you get out of being a total beginner. I think you go to yellow belt, but I can't even remember. The color is not important. It's just that you graduate up. But that doesn't mean you just stop as soon as you get that next color. And and for the people I know who have, and there are many who have pursued it beyond that, when they get their black belt, that's a sign of having spent years at their craft, of getting better, of becoming better and better masters. It's a relentless pursuit, but almost nobody I know who gets their first degree black belt turns around the next day and says, okay, I'm done. It's never done. It's constant. It's relentless. It's incredibly frustrating and difficult. And there are times when it's tough to force yourself to go to practice. Not every day going to practice is easy, but when you fight through those things, you build this toughness, and you build a consistent approach to your craft of volleyball. And in the process, by not letting those difficult moments pin you to the floor and make you quit, you become a much stronger person. You become better at volleyball, and you allow yourself the chances to get those great moments of satisfaction too, that go along with the frustration of always trying to get better.
Definitely. I love that, similarity of to getting a black belt. It's never over. I mean,
Nope.
at yourself, you still have, hey, I want to win as a coach a gold medal in the Olympics for the women, and that's huge. Next one, we're going to go a little different direction here with this next one. What was it like preparing for, the 2020 Olympics and then having it move to next summer? I know that there is even some talks that if there's not a vaccine by then, they might even move it another year. So the uncertainty obviously is pretty tough for you guys right now.
It's not the easiest. It's something different, but we're looking at it as these extra 12 months that we've been given. Maybe there was some disappointment at first, but we're thinking, awesome, 12 more months to sharpen our swords, 12 more months to get better, 12 more months for our team to get to know each other better, develop more trust amongst our group, to have a team that can play as one 15 months from now, a team that can be a badass team 15 months from now, and to develop special relationships. Our team's changed a lot over the last few years. We've got some much younger players who've recently joined us in the last couple of years. So we've got we're happy to have that extra time, actually. I think part of it is we don't have any choice but to be happy to have that time. If we were to approach the next 15 months as being mad at having that extra 12 months, then we would just be wasting the opportunity. So while initially it was not the easiest news, it's good that we know what's going to happen. We're assuming that it'll happen as planned next year, starting July 23rd in Tokyo. And we're super excited because that night would be opening ceremonies. 2 days later, our women's team will start with a match against Argentina if they keep the same schedule that they had already set for this summer's Olympics, and we'll go from there. So that's what we're focusing on. And like I said, there was a lot of uncertainty at first. There was some disappointment, and now we're all just thinking, fantastic. Let's put these extra 12 months to best use. It's all how we frame it.
Yeah, adapting and turning a negative into a positive is huge right now. It's something we keep on talking to our kids about. It's big. If I don't ask this question, I'm going to get yelled at for sure. Why did you get the yellow card in set 1 in 1988 Olympics? If you remember that one. It's a long ways away.
In which match of the 88 Olympics?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it was in the final. If you did, I think it was in the final, but I could be wrong on that.
I may have gotten a yellow card in my career. I may have gotten a few more than one yellow card in my career. I saw a lot of hands go up when, Scott, you mentioned earlier about how riveted we all are following these episodes about Michael Jordan, one of, if not the greatest ever. And I'm following it too. And I guarantee that he did not go his whole career without ever getting a technical. He explained it to us just in these episodes that were aired this 2 days ago, less than 48 hours ago, that anything he could do to push for his team to have a better chance to win, to have a chance to improve, to have an advantage over the other team was something that he was going to push. And so he wasn't always the nicest teammate. We heard from Steve Kerr that eventually, and who's now coaching and doing a great job with the Golden State Warriors, but we heard from him that eventually he had to stand up for himself and they exchanged punches. That's not something we want to happen in any team. We have not had that happen in the USA women's team, I'm happy to say. Probably doesn't happen in many of your gyms, but when you're pursuing things as relentlessly as Michael Jordan did with the Bulls, things are going to get gnarly. Feathers are going to get ruffled. Feelings are going to get hurt sometimes. But as he said, he never asked or demanded that anybody on his team do something that he wasn't doing at least as much of, if not more so. And so they could see that he had total credibility in his dedication. They even showed him running suicides, and he's like way ahead of everybody and almost taunting the people that he was ahead. We did some of that too in our USA gym when I was a player on the men's team. So it's just, again, it's not about being nice. It's about trying to figure out ways to draw out the best in people. I wouldn't advocate all the things that he did. He did it with a brute force mentality. There was a little less subtlety to it. I think as a player, I was a little more like that in terms of a brute force mentality, but there are other ways, a number of ways, a number of options that someone as a leader can resort to in order to try to get the best out of their teammates. That's one of the most important things you can do as a volleyball player or as a coach, is be someone who elevates the play of those around you, who elevates the people of those around you, who makes people around you better. Michael did that maybe better than anybody in the history of the game. That was always my goal too. And if you as a player do that really well, the coach almost has no choice but to have you on the court. If people play better when you're on the court with them, if you figure out as many ways as you can to make them better, you're doing a really nice job as a volleyball player. This is a quintessential team game, unlike basketball, where Michael could dominate at times and just take over and maybe make up things in his mind as to why he had to take over and try to humiliate a defender that was on him. But we don't get to do that in volleyball. We don't, as soon as the ball comes to us, we have to reflect it immediately. We have to give it up to somebody else. So it's even more of a team sport. And that's where we have these chances to make people around us better, both as players and as coaches. But I'm riveted by this story with Michael. Sometimes we're going to get yellow cards, back to what you talked about. So I think at that, it might have been in the final, and I was furious with the referee because I didn't feel like he was calling it evenly. And when you have even matched teams, all we're asking for is that they call the game evenly and let the players ultimately determine the outcome. But sometimes in my frustration or in my hunger and our team's hunger to go for a gold medal, we had to work right on that edge.
100%. You know, little story time for me real quick here. First times I met you, Karch, in the national team gym, and we're talking about, you know, how leaders lead and stuff like that. And the story that I kept hearing about you on the national team from, you know, any alum who came in or whatever is, if there was a time to shag volleyballs, Karch would shag more volleyballs than anybody else in the whole entire gym. And that is just a leader's mentality right there. It doesn't matter if it's mopping or shagging balls. They said, you know, so-and-so would have 2 balls and Karch would have 9. And that's just, you know, a testament to all you kids out there. Is doesn't matter what it is, a leader is going to lead in all aspects, like Karch talked about.
Yep. It's hard to have an impact on your teammates if you're asking them to do things that you won't do at least as much yourself, like Michael Jordan mentioned just 2 nights ago. And so when I was not on the court in training, I want to make the training go better. And I want to keep people safe. So I don't want a volleyball rolling on the court and somebody could land on it and sprain an ankle or have something worse happen. So I want to be good for my teammates. I'm going to try and shag. We used to have contests who could pick up the most volleyballs with no help off the floor. I think I got up to 10 one time. And actually kept them in my arms before walking 30 feet to put them into a cart. But we'd have contests about that. We had contests about wiping up. It was really crazy because going into our second Olympics, this is a weird rule, but internationally the rule used to be, and all of you have played under conditions where it's hot and humid. And so if you hit the floor, your jersey is wet. Now the floor is wet. What happens? You need to wipe it up to keep it safe for your teammates around you and for the other team across the net. But the old rule used to be internationally that nobody could just run on and wipe like they have now. They have people who will do that. They watch, they wait for somebody to hit the floor, and as soon as the play's over, they sprint out, wipe, and get out of there without having to get any permission to do it. It used to be that the second referee would have to walk out, verify that there was water, walk back, then send the wiper over. And so we said, look, this is a horrendous system. It's taken the game way too long. So we're glad I offered, and some of my teammates did, we offered in an exhibition, a friendly match in Japan. We're going to show you how this works. You just watch, wait till somebody hits the floor, play's done, sprint out. We were actually having so much fun with it because the guys who were out of the game were not as active, so they didn't have any sweat. So we would dive while we did it. We were like diving ball kids or sweat wiper kids, and we just had a blast showing that because we needed the rule to be changed. We actually had to play that second Olympics where you asked me about that yellow card, where the old system was still in place. So if you notice, if you look at YouTube footage, most of us had a tiny white washcloth from the Olympic Village tucked into the back of our shorts because we had to wipe up for ourselves because the rule didn't change until after that Olympics in an effort to keep our teammates healthy.
Love it. It's one of my favorite things to watch in a tennis tournament is the little ball boy going back and forth and getting the ball as fast as he can.
The ball girls and ball boys are relentless. They're awesome. And so that's what we do in volleyball now, both for collecting the volleyballs and for keeping the court dry and safe.
Looks like we have a new social media competition and see if anybody can pick up more balls than Karch for an all volleyball.
There we go. I want you guys to post. Send me the winner. No assistance, though. You got to do it all yourself.
That's right. That's right. Well, with all the amazing athletes that you've been around, obviously Johnny, Bernardi, they just keep piling up and all the big names. Is there a trait or traits that the best of the best have in common? What does that trait make a good athlete, a great athlete?
I would say that, if we look at basketball, we're learning more about the behind the scenes stuff with Michael Jordan. We had such an awful moment earlier this year. I'm sure everybody remembers where they were when we heard what happened to Kobe and his family and the other people on that helicopter. And people like LeBron, they're all unique in their way. They are not carbon copies. They're not cookie cutter copies of each other, but they're all driven to be better tomorrow than they all were driven or are driven to be better tomorrow than they are today. So that's probably the common thing, is that they're not completely happy with the game they have. They want a better game. No matter how good it is, they want better. And they will work. I think we heard about Michael. He was in the next morning after they lost the playoffs, not even 12 hours off. He was in working out the next morning after he came back and his team lost that playoff series. So he was not completely satisfied with where he was, and neither are the other greats. They each do it in their own way, but they balance this tension of happy with some things that they've developed, but never completely happy with their game, and this willingness to do the work it takes to get better and to get the better that they're hungering for. Most people, when we play in the Olympics, lots of people are really excited to watch. I certainly am. If I were home, or anytime I have been in the US during an Olympics, I'm super excited to watch. But what a lot of people forget, they pay attention really closely to the Olympics for 2 weeks. They don't get to see all the work all of these people are doing the other 3 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks. But believe me, the work is getting done. It has to get done, and that's how people pursue better.
Okay, we're going to flip it over to the beach. Is there a current AVP player that you love to team up with, and why?
Well, I need all the help I can get. I've got 2 artificial hips now. I can play volleyball, and I'm happy to be able to do it without pain. But yeah, if I need all the help I can get, I need Phil. And I don't need him now. I need him when he's at his, and he's still really good, but I don't even need him now. I need him when he's at his prime. I want to just sit in the corner and watch him do everything is what I need right now. So,
Yeah.
But he's certainly not the only one. There are great players out there, and excited to not so much to cheer them on this year for the AVP. Of course, we wish them luck, but we'll be cheering our fellow Americans on next summer in Tokyo, because volleyball is a sport that the USA does really well at. Both on the indoor side, we'll be cheering on our men's team and our women's team. And on the sand side, with the 2 teams that will represent us on the women's side, Carrie Walsh-Jennings, trying to go for her, gosh, I've lost track of how many, I guess that would be her 6th Olympics. Sydney, Athens, Beijing, London, Rio, Tokyo. Ridiculous. Sydney indoors, then 3 gold medals, then a bronze medal, and trying to qualify for and win another medal next year in Tokyo. 6 Olympics over 21 years. That's just unheard of. Now, the biggest challenge that will be fun to watch someday, the ultimate challenge, is I'd love it because not many people have won a gold medal in both indoors and sand. Actually, only one. But what I'd like to see is somebody do that in the same Olympics. Play indoors, alternating days with beach, and be so good that they could play with their indoor national team and still play on the sand. You know how for Michael Phelps, they adjusted the schedule a little so that he could do his races and they wouldn't conflict with each other. I'd love to see something like that, that somebody is so good at both that they could pursue medals in each discipline in the same Olympics. That would be the ultimate volleyball test.
Tell you what, I know the last time I was in the gym was maybe last year, and getting out there, you're still out there playing with the girls all the time. I know it. I'm sure you still are. But you can't.
That's only when we're really desperate and we're short. We don't have 12 players. I can step in. And usually, what is it? The showbiz thing. Make one good play and then just step off and leave them thinking that I'm better than I am.
I've seen you lay out for a couple balls still. Sure. Yeah, and no, 2008 Phil. Boy, that would have been fun to see you and him together. Are there any ways that you build a player's volleyball IQ on the national team? Obviously, you're getting some of the best players. You know, first team All-Americans through and through. You got players of the years. But is there one way that you found out how to build a player's volleyball IQ and mental toughness?
Those are 2 different things. One, volleyball IQ, another mental toughness. But on the IQ side, I don't think there's one answer to that question. But a lot of it is what we're looking at and when we're looking at it. If you go to the USA Volleyball website, I actually a lot of us on our respective staffs, a lot of the coaches on the men's team, headed by John Spera, and a lot of the coaches with our women's national team program have posted a number of videos or a number of instructional pieces. I'm still working on part 2, but there is one in there called Reading Part 1. And most of it is, it points out that the people who see the game best, who have the best volleyball IQ, it's not because they have great vision, 20/20 or 20/15 vision. It's that they look at the right things. And it's not because they're looking all over the place really quickly and their eyes are jumping from spot to spot. It's because they understand that all they really have to do is look at a couple of things for a longer period of time, and they get more information. So a lot of how we coach and teach is just, what are you looking at? Do you know what to look at when? And how do you get the clues as to what's going to happen next? And a lot of it is looking for a longer period of time at the person who's going to touch the ball next, especially when it's on the other side of the net. So looking at their setter for a longer period of time, looking at their hitter for a longer period of time. That'll give us a lot of information. Most people are not very good at hiding their intentions when a setter is going to set or a hitter is going to hit. So those are really good ways to build your volleyball IQ, is to look at the right things look at fewer things, but the right things for a longer period of time. And that applies to all sports, whether it's ice hockey or soccer or whatever. Looking at the right things gives you most of the information that you need. In terms of the mental side of things, something we talk about regularly with our team is some people, I'm sure some of you have heard of this term called being in the zone, being in this state where things tend to happen pretty effortlessly and you don't have to think a lot and you're playing pretty free and relaxed. I can tell you that there are some people who are pursuing that, trying to find this zone state. I'm in the opposite or the other school of thought. I can count basically probably 10 times or less in my career where I was in that zone and everything was just flowing in this thing that some people call the flow state. It happened so rarely, and I had no control over when it would happen, that I gave up even trying for that. Most of my efforts were, and this is my belief, that the great ones are all about compensation and adapting and adjusting. The great pitchers in baseball and softball, some days they don't have their fastball. That just happens. You ask great pitchers, what percentage of the time did you have all of your favorite pitches, all of your stuff, everything working for you? And most pitchers would say 15 to 20% of the time. So we have to be good with that 80 to 85% of the time when we don't have all of our best stuff. How do we do that? Well, a lot of it is dealing with the thoughts that come in. I could tell us all to go silent for the next 20 seconds and tell myself and all of you, all right, we're going to go silent. I'm going to start right now. And I'm ordering you to have 0 thoughts pop into your head in the next 20 seconds. I would guess that all of us would fail. We'd all have at least 1, if not 3 or 4 or 5 thoughts. The first might be, what the heck is Karch telling us to do this for? And then it could be, oh man, I had peanut butter for lunch. I wish I'd had a meatball sandwich. And then it could be something else. And so we probably have 4 or 5 thoughts in that time, none of which we wanted to have, but they just happen. So the lesson is, we don't have complete control over our thoughts. And sometimes we have thoughts come into our heads that we didn't want to have come into our heads. I wouldn't even call them bad thoughts. I would just call them less productive thoughts. So when I go back to the service line, a less productive thought might be, oh, please God, I hope this serve goes in. That's not really going to help me hit the serve that I need. Or please don't miss. or, oh, Carol missed her serve just before me. Now I really have to get this over the net, or please don't have it fall before the center line. I'm going to owe my team donuts and I don't want to do that. And what kind of donuts are they going to tell me to get? And it can be endless. Are any of those things productive to me going back and hitting an assertive serve around the right target in space? No. So they happen. They happen to all of us. All of us have less productive thoughts. So the important thing is to understand we all have them. Unless you sit at the base of the Himalayan mountain chain for the next 20 years and work on quieting your mind, you're probably not going to be a master and being able to banish all the less productive thoughts that are going to come into your head. So get used to dealing with them. We all have them. And then the other part is noticing, like, oh, whoa, holy crap, I just had an unproductive thought. And now I can set that aside and think, okay, I'm going at that. I see that passing target across the net. I'm setting that other less productive thought aside and I'm attacking the space and I'm blowing her up. I'm knocking her kneecap off. I'm going to hit the top of her shoes and untie her shoelaces. Whatever it is, I can redirect myself to a more productive thought. So that's the ability that we have. We don't control all of the thoughts that come up inside our heads, but we do control our ability to notice and to respond by grabbing onto a more productive thought. So that's a big part of the mental side of this game when it comes to actually being in the middle of a competitive activity and training, or when we have a uniform on and we're competing in a tournament. Scott, I think you're muted. We got to unmute you. There we go.
There we go. Cool. Last two questions here. What is your greatest accomplishment?
Well, hopefully there's a lot more to come in my life. I'm at 59 now, so I don't have an answer to that yet. But some of them are, I aspire to be a good husband, a good dad, a good son, a good brother, a good man, a good American, a good volleyball player, and a good coach. I don't know if I can fully judge how I've done in those things, but that's what I'm working on. And I take it one day at a time.
Beautiful answer. Last question for you, and this is for all of our kids out there. You know, is there something that you're telling your girls to do right now to get ready to get back into the gym, whether it be on the safety side or staying, you know, active or whatever it is? Because it's a crazy time for everyone. Obviously, kids are losing their senior year of high school, their last year playing club. Don't know if this next high school season is going to start up for the girls, you know, missing out on the Olympics. Is there something that you got them on right now, like a little regimen, or just relax and stay mentally involved?
The most important thing our players can do right now, they are doing, and that is that they are working out. Some of them have zero equipment. Some of them have some equipment. Some of them have a pretty good amount of equipment, maybe some stuff that they borrowed, dumbbells and other things from our own weight room, our own USA volleyball weight room in Anaheim. But regardless of how much equipment or how little equipment, or whether they have a basement or a garage or a driveway, we had one of our players a few weeks ago she posted a picture of doing, or actually she didn't. What we do is we have our players in groups of 3 or 4 doing workouts with our strength and conditioning coach or with our athletic trainer on Zoom. And so one of our coaches took a picture of her doing lunges in the snow on the sidewalk in front of her house. So that was the kind of thing that we have to be doing. Why do we have to be doing it? Because our players have been playing this game for a long time. They've gotten themselves to a really high level physically. So our big goal is to minimize the losses right now. We can't have them sitting on the couch and eating potato chips for 6 months. That's going to do nobody any good at all. And once they get back into volleyball, it's going to expose them to a much greater chance of injury. So we have to try to minimize the losses, blunt the losses, as our great strength and conditioning coach Jimmy Stitz would say. And so that is our primary goal, along with we're doing some video study and doing some other things. But far most important is to keep as much of what we have as possible, not only because we're in a period where we don't get to do any volleyball, but because we want them to stay healthy once they get back to playing volleyball. There's going to be some shock to their system as they get back into jumping and landing and serving and attacking and blocking and all the other things. So we have to be really good at trying to maintain as well as we can the physical side of what we have. And so that's our big opportunity right now. We're working out in small groups to do that. It's critical work for us because, as I said, the last time our players probably took a break, and maybe many of you took a break from volleyball for this long, might have been before they ever started playing volleyball. And who knows how many months it will actually be until they can play real 6-versus-6 volleyball across the net. That's still not going to be for quite some time. So none of them can even remember the last time they went 5-6 months without playing real high intensity, normal intensity 6-on-6 volleyball. That's why it's so important to take care of ourselves physically.
Well, Karch, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. It's been phenomenal. I'm getting blown up on my phone right now how this is amazing, and Karch should be running for president and all these different wild things.
No, I don't. That is not an easy job right now. And I don't wish to be any governor, any mayor, any president, anything. Man, it is gnarly. But hopefully you all, I wish you all continued for you all to stay well, that you can get back to volleyball soon, both coaching it and playing it, and wish you all great luck. And just been an honor to visit with you all for a little bit here.
Best of luck next year, Karch. Thank you very much. Go win the gold for us.
We're going to give that a shot, and we will never say no to a little good luck. So hopefully we'll have you all out there cheering all of our USA volleyball athletes, men, women, indoor, beach, out next year at the Tokyo Olympics. They're working, PS note, they're working to add snow volleyball to the Winter Olympics and try to become the first sport that happens in both summer and Winter Olympics. So maybe we'll get to cheer on in early 2022 or some future Olympics, USA snow volleyball players too.
Well, you've got the indoor, you've got the sand, so you got to go for the snow, man.
No.
Thanks, Karch. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thanks. Good luck, everybody. Wish you all the best.
See you, Karch.